Look, we're looking at a law that was actually passed by India's parliament almost a little over 4 years ago. And 4 years after it was enacted by Indian Parliament, it's been notified, which is a technical phrase for the fact that it comes into force. Now, what is this law? I've been looking at a lot of the Western media headlines that have suggested that this law, in some ways, will exclude Muslims, Indian Muslims who are already citizens from citizenship. So I first want to say that while it's a hotly debated, contentious law, that is not true. What the law does is to provide illegal migrants from three countries in India's neighborhood, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh, who are religious minorities in those countries, all of whom are, as you know, Muslim dominated, the chance to seek refuge or citizenship in India on the grounds that they have faced a religious persecution in their home countries. To that extent, it excludes non Muslims from these countries. The second sort of thing to important fact to know is that it applies to those who have entered India on or before December 2014. So that's just to give you some context. This is basically the government argues that the driving principle is religious persecution of minorities in Muslim dominated three countries of India's immediate neighborhood. The critics of the government are arguing that any sort of basis of religious discrimination, even for offering refuge to illegal migrants, is simply against the spirit of the Indian Constitution. The debate carries on. The law has been appealed and challenged in India's Supreme Court just a few hours ago.
And so where is that challenge and how long might it take to play out? Because, of course, elections are just a few weeks away now.
Yes, I don't know that we will see any immediate intervention from the top court of India. These are slow moving processes, and they're going to take their own time. I think what's important to know is that immediately all that it does in the short term is allow for members of six religious communities, and I'm just going to list them for you: Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, Christians, Jains, and Buddhists from three countries, the countries I've already mentioned, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, if they have entered India as illegal migrants, to apply for legal citizenship. And if they've been here 5 years, then their status can change from illegal migrant to naturalized citizen. That is currently the status of the law. The really contentious aspect of this law will come into force if and when it is juxtaposed with what's called the National Register of Citizens, which is also known as the NRC. We do not have any clarity as to when and if this will happen. There are concerns that, for example, if there were Muslims who came in from any of these three countries many years ago and have now settled down and made India their home down the generations, if they do not have the requisite paperwork, what might be their fate? But that is not an immediate impact of this law. The immediate impact of this law is only to allow six religious communities to become naturalized citizens of India.
And so to that point, Bhargav, has it ever been tested that a Muslim who has come from outside India has been granted citizenship of India?
So, in the east of the country, which is where, by the way, even as we speak, protests are erupting against this new law, and in the state of Assam, which is actually a BJP-led state, which is, of course, the Prime Minister Modi's party, the protests are because migration from border areas from the neighboring country of Bangladesh has always been a political hot potato, and therefore now the opposition is that, look, if there were Hindus who came in illegally, are you going to just allow them to become citizens? So it's actually the reverse argument that's taking place from elsewhere in the country. When this law was first enacted about 4 years ago, it was against the backdrop of this entire debate around creating a national register of citizens. And at that time, there were testimonies from Muslim families who said that they did not have the documentation. And if they were undocumented, what would be their fate? And that has been the concern of civil rights activists. And we have to wait for that phase to unfold in this story. At the moment, obviously, we can't take away the politics. We're a few weeks away from elections. The timing is clearly political because this is a law that's been sitting in cold storage now for 4 years. But it's also a law that will be popular with the base of the BJP that believes that this is in some ways India avenging or amending the wrongs of the partition, where neighboring countries were founded on the principles of a single religion. And India, as a diverse country, is now opening its homes to religious minorities that have not been treated well in those countries. That's certainly the rationalization of the government, but it's an extremely contentious law and it's being fiercely debated here at home.
Yeah. Now, tell me too, we're starting to see fresh protests again, sporadic, but last time this act was shelved because of protests. They became quite violent. Do you see that happening again?
I somehow don't. I think, when this law was first enacted, a lot of the protests were student-led, and students on the streets is a hard voice to ignore. And at that time, the argument was that India's constitution simply did not allow for religion to be attached to the idea of citizenship. But as I've tried to explain, the citizenship law without the National Register of Citizens, and at the moment we have no clarity on what happens to this national register. It is basically not harming or impeding the lives of anybody. In fact, we've also seen celebrations by, for example, Hindus who've been living in some of the border states alongside Pakistan, states like Rajasthan, where they've come in illegally years ago and have been kind of nowhere people. So my own sense is, the government kept this law in cold storage. It waited for emotions to die down. Those emotions have died down. And I think those who are opposing this law are now going to take the legal route and not the route of the street to challenge it. And that's going to be a long, drawn-out process. So I think for now, the Modi government will certainly enter these elections with this law firmly in place.
Yeah. Barkha, always good to get your perspective and analysis. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.